Hello, 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 welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to talk about the two manifestos we've gotten so far for 3.20 update. Those being Jewel Manifesto and Archnemesis Manifesto. First, we have the Jewel Manifesto. I won't read it word for word, there are just some things I want to highlight from the information we got about the changes that seemed a bit more interesting to me. And that includes some things from Q&A. Right, so Jewels providing more element avoidance or reduce effectiveness, etc. is great. It's an additional way to patch some holes in your defenses. If you choose to min-max your Jewels, that is. Or min-max your Jewels for defensive purposes, I guess. And as there are no tiers in normal Jewels, this change might be okay. It's bigger values than we had before. There's no tiers, so you can roll the same mods you could roll before, but they will give you more out of it. Then again, considering that normal Jewels only get reduce effectiveness or reduce duration, I don't see people going for extra Jewel slots just to stack this, especially because you can get pure ailment avoidance from something like Purity or gear mods and so on and so forth, and that counts for all elemental ailments. And if you were to try to get them for every one, considering there's like 6, or if you separate chill and freeze, there's 7, that's quite a lot. So I don't think this is, unless it's generic reduce duration or reduce effect, I just don't see people investing in this. But I mean, bigger value is always good. It's a buff. So now they do change also the Abyss Jewels. Abyss Jewels already had an Elements Avoidance mod, but it was conditional while affected by Elusive. And here you can read, Abyss Jewels now have mods that provide avoidances of various elements. Now have mods. So you could assume that this is new mods, completely new things. And yes, Abyss Jewels have tiers of mods, so who knows how hard or / easy it would be to get. But here I'm gonna point out one thing. So this is from a Q&A where it says that regular Jewels can roll up to 35 reduced duration or reduced effect. Abyss Jewels can roll up to 50% elements avoidance. So slap that sucker, 2 of these suckers on your build and you're Gucci, right? Well, then you read the next line. Will the new Jewel modifiers or existing Jewel modifiers have modifier tiers? And it says regular Jewels don't have modifier tiers, blah, blah, blah. But here, Abyssal Jewel modifiers already had tiers. We've just buffed the modifier values on them that benefit element mitigation. So to me, this seems like they've only buffed existing mods that were relating to element avoidance. And the only mod that I skimmed through was the one with Elusive. Or basically conditional stuff. So, I mean, if you can keep Elusive all the time, this is super easy way to cap your element avoidance, I suppose, but I don't know. The Manifesto, and even with the Q&A, this didn't clear up this question for me, whether they are adding a new modifier or just buffing existing ones. So, I don't know, what you guys think? Are we gonna get a new modifier? Is this what we're getting, just buffs? Or actual new modifiers? Because there are plenty of builds that won't get Elusive, so this is only a buff for some people who can get Elusive, I guess. Still a buff. It's still a buff, okay? It's still good. It's still good. And the best part is that other forms of element mitigation being nerfed to offset the buffs to Jewels, and the answer is no, which is beautiful, because not everybody, like, if you're making us, I'm just happy that they're not making us use the Jewels to do the things that we could do without Jewels before, even especially because they've already nerfed it before the values. So I'm happy. This is the best thing. This is the best thing they could do. So that's nice. Now moving on to unique Jewels. Personally, I'm all for them trimming the unique drop pools or whatever items that people don't use, basically. Right? So there are loads of Jewels or loads of uniques in general that is either not used by anybody or so few times or such little usage that even if they weren't there, could be substituted by something else anyways. And actually giving us something that could be interesting, valuable, exciting to get, and especially usable. I'm all for that. But the only thing annoying is that we won't be able to get implicits on the jewels that they have moved to corrupt only outcomes, right? Unless there's coming some divination card that gives you implicits on a corrupted jewel. I'm not sure if one exists. I mean, I quickly checked before and I couldn't find anything, but means something like brute force solution or any attribute transforming jewels were used on, I mean, I wouldn't say a lot of builds, but still a bunch of builds would use them. And you could, because they were so cheap and so common, you could actually get something like corrupting blood on them, immunity on them, which is a really, really good defensive layer on your build. Now, that won't be possible. And it is kind of a nerf. No, the whole thing of being only a corrupt outcome doesn't really bother me because people corrupt their jewels all the time. Their normal jewels to get an implicit or whatever. So I don't think there's not gonna be a thing where there's a shortage of these corrupt only outcome jewels. But the problem is the implicit, so that's kind of a nerf. That's the only thing that is like a bit... And also, the golem jewels, they said that it's a more deterministic source of getting them, but there is no... At this point, maybe there will be in patch notes, but there's no information. And again, it's not like, so many builds would use them, but there is a subtype of build that needs these jewels, basically, for it to work. So, more deterministic way, what does that mean in context of PoE? Like harvest type of way of getting jewels? Like, what does that even mean? Some quest? I don't know. Like, what is a more deterministic source of getting items in PoE? Divination cards? What do they mean with this? This is what kind of confuses me. Like, what do they mean with this? Other than that, generally speaking, this is good. There were plenty of jewels that weren't seeing any use, and it's good that they're trimming it down, making more exciting drops, just because, I mean, it keeps things fresh. That's what we want. We want the freshness. We want the fresh breeze in PoE, so it doesn't get stale or we get bored and so on and so forth. So these extra jewels, I mean, there could be super, super chase items, just like there are a few chase jewels, and I'm really hoping that they're not too rare, that we don't ever see them. You can only buy them from somebody else. So I do hope that they don't drop super rarely, but yeah, exciting. Another point that I saw people getting quite upset about is that some mods from the jewels that are getting trimmed, unique jewels that are getting trimmed, some mods are gonna get moved to core mod pool. Like, one of the examples they used is mana reservation stat from a quest reward unique jewel. And people were going super fucking crazy. Oh my god, this is a huge nerf to my crafting jewels. And I'm like, dude, seriously. It's like, barely. Like, first of all, I don't think... I mean, it all depends on the weighing of these mods. But first of all, I don't think that these new mods might have super high weighing in the first place. So the stuff that you were rolling before we had these mods, most of the time you will be getting still. You still will be getting... I mean, it depends on how you roll your jewels, obviously. Having 1,000 mods and then having 5 extra mods doesn't really decrease your chances all that much, unless those mods are so much more common than everything else, and I doubt that. So just chill your pants. This is, I mean, technically it's a nerf, but like barely. It's same thing as like whenever they add anything new to anything. Like, is it a buff because that's better that we had before, or is it a nerf because this makes any particular thing harder to get? Like, yes and yes? I think it's barely gonna make a difference for the things that we were already getting, unless you maybe are going for these new mods. And personally, I don't think their weighing is gonna be that high, so sure, it's gonna be hard to get, but like just the same as any other mod that has low weighing is to get. It's just a pain in the ass. That's it. That's how crafting works in PoE. It's just a pain in the ass. I think people need to chill. It's like barely gonna make a difference, in my opinion. Alright, now let's move on to bigger fish, which is the Archnemesis changes. Question is, did everybody get what they want? And generally speaking, I guess yes. We did get what general consensus is that we did get what we want. Now, personally, by the end of, by the middle of the Calendar League, I already had a build that didn't freaking care about Archnemesis mods, which was my Blade Trapper. Like, I didn't care if it had 4 mods and had 5 essences on it. I was still killing it just as fast. Didn't care if that had 4 mods, 5 essences, and 4 altars on top of it. Didn't care. My build didn't care about that. For me, it's like, whatever. I'm happy for the general feeling in the community, because it was just so negative all the time. And when people are constantly coming and complaining about it, I'm like, I don't care about it, but like, if you feel so strongly about it, also because generally the whole community is much happier, so I think it's better for the game. And I do agree with the sentiment that you could get super nasty combos that really countered your build and it didn't feel good, and if you stacked like insane mods and it was resistance to your damage and it felt like you're fighting a uber boss in just a normal map with just a normal rare monster. So I do agree that it was annoying, but personally I didn't feel like it was that big of a deal. But yeah, it was annoying. One of the bigger points that I point out here is mods do one specific thing. The previous system that we have with rare monsters, each mod did specific thing. One of the reasons why they did change wanted to change to Archnemesis is because the mod lists were getting so long on rare monsters, especially with the Nemesis mods and so on and so forth, and they weren't color-coded, I guess. So they weren't visually explaining what the mod did. And so we went to Archnemesis. But Archnemesis had a different problem, is that there were loads of different mods, Archnemesis mods, that had a subset of mods, and they were color-coded, so you could kind of say like, okay, Magma Barrier is a fire-related mod because it was red. So that was visually clear, but like, it wouldn't explain what the mod itself did. Like, sure, the visually clear things like adding Magma Barrier or spawning volatiles that follow you were visually clear because they were literally happening on the screen, but the things that are not visually clear, like the things that buff monster damage and buff their resistances, like you can't really see that on the monster. Like, it's not represented in any clear way, especially when you have a very flashy skill you use, like you won't be able to see anything. And if you just see Magma Barrier, basically you just have to learn every mod what it does exactly to make sure like, oh, this one counters me, this one doesn't counter me. In general, the flavors of the mods is an indicator, but there are some things like Magma Barrier is fine, but then you have other mods like Incendiary, who has ignites or fire and ignite resistance. So maybe Magma Barrier for your fire build on ignite build is fine, but then on something that is resistant or barely affected by ignites, like Incendiaries, all of a sudden is not okay for your build. And they're both fire flavors, but one of them actually breaks your build. Or there can come a point where you don't care about these things. You don't care about these things, but there's plenty of people, way more people, who are affected by this. And if you think about it, like, Magma Barrier in itself has 7 different mods. If they separate all of them, as they said on Twitter, and actually put in the Q&A, is that they're testing 2 to 4 mods per rare monster. Now, even if they buff these mods, and it depends on how much they buff each individual mod, because some are more impactful than others, and so on and so forth, right? But even if they buff them, just think about it. Before this, we had 1 to 4 Archnemesis mods. Each Archnemesis mod has on average like 5-6 modifiers in it, each of them. So if you got even going from 1 Archnemesis mod to 2 Archnemesis mod, that's twice as many mods on the monster. So it's like the difficulty spike is insane. This was especially prominent at the beginning of Calendar League because, they since nerfed it, and especially after nerfs, I really didn't care. But at the beginning, you could notice it. Even while leveling, it was like, oof. But But when you get to low tier maps and you get all of a sudden you find a 3 mod Archnemesis monster, like the difficulty spike was so huge because each of those Archnemesis mods contain like freaking, in total you have like 15 mods on the monster. So overall, it's a good change if they actually keep up to it. In my opinion, they will. We could see a comeback of a node that we used to have on the Atlas passive tree, which gave monsters an extra Archnemesis mod. But in this case, I think it will be just an extra rare mod. These fractured Archnemesis mods, separated Archnemesis mods. I could see that making a comeback, especially because they are making hidden mods that used to be the loot goblin mods, right? That they're making now hidden. And the higher chance to find these hidden mods is the more mods you have on this rare monster. So I just I kind of hope / think that they will give us ways to get more rare monsters with more mods on them. This will be such a huge difference in difficulty. I don't know. It all depends on how they buff them, but I could totally see them giving you a way to make it harder, potentially for higher rewards, right? And also, I have to say that I'm happy that they're doing this. Not like I was ever feeling the FOMO of not getting a color when I did find one of these mobs that would potentially drop you all this loot. I would just kill it anyways, because it's too much work finding a magic finder, in my opinion. It breaks your flow of the gameplay. I'm happy that they're making it hidden, not completely removing, but I feel like they need to scale it down. They need to spread it out and scale it down a little bit because it's ridiculous. From a person who barely invests in Magic Find or doesn't invest in Magic Find, you would get a couple of chaos from the same mob that people would get tens of divines. Like, it's just a huge discrepancy, even if they invest in Magic Find. Like, it's too big. They just need to spread it out a little bit. Did we get what we want? I think so. I think everybody got what they wanted. Again, wait for the patch notes. This is technically a buff so far, unless they really put these separate mods so high. And I could actually see that happening where they overbuff them. And then people complain at league start and they nerf them. And they basically bring it to the level they want them to, because the difference between the starting point and the nominal point is going to be noticeable for the players, but that's actually where they want it to be. Overall good. Can't wait for patch notes, can't wait for new skills, can't wait to start a new league. Let me know what you think. Bye, bye, bye.